Hello guys, Avery here, and today we got another video in which we talk map stuff. And I will have multiple games on this map today and during this video, whilst we just talk some smack first and then get into the other games with some commentary later. Now Mines is one of the oldest maps in the game and has since undergone quite some changes. In the past, quite big and open, with the encounter cap in the middle area of the hill entrance, it is now located in the city on the east of the map. But from what I've noticed, it seems to also be not very used. Mines itself, in my opinion, is one of the most hated maps in the games, which why we'll go into right now. It itself is centered mainly around one key location, being the hill in the middle of the map. Matches can easily be decided by who owns it or who wins the fight to secure its entrance, meaning that you don't necessarily need to get up there. Early in the game, fast tanks such as light tanks and mediums, like we see Senko doing here, will rush to that key position as it is very important to obtain, often resulting in people dying within 30 seconds of the matches begin if the enemy is able to counter that push well enough. The main question of today's video therefore is if mines should be changed, what could be changed, and just in general what I think about this map itself. The map is one of only two that I can think of that are played throughout all tiers of 1 to 10, and the second one here being Fort Despair. Therefore, for being able to play it from so early on, you will learn how to play those two maps and just in general how to approach the battle. Whilst in Fort Despair it leaves a lot of room for ideas and unique plays, Mines is rather simple as it funnels most of the players into the middle of the map, which is where the main fight usually happens. For newer players that will work just fine, as it somewhat teaches you how to play against your opponent head on and gives you a little bit of a tip or tour guide on how to, let's say, somewhat decently learn how to hold down against your opponents. And what I think what it teaches you best is the importance of key locations. As I've said earlier, the hill is probably the most important key location of all key locations in this entire game. So getting this is basically already a godsend for, hey, you will most likely win. Of course, it's not always the case in that sense. What the map, in my opinion, makes it the best is just that. For being able to teach you how important it can be to get such a position. And especially since tier 1, because you get this map on tier 1, it will be one of your first maps you ever play. And I mean, you see it in all tiers, so you know, it's highly likely that you have played on this map before, unless you haven't played this game yet, which would be rather good. And that's only for the new players. But what about old players? What about veterans who've played this game for long enough? And how does it fare in those higher tier games? And this is where Mines is at its biggest flaw. As it is a super tiny map, it becomes harder and harder to play on as you go higher into the tiers, because tanks become taller, bigger, and most importantly faster. The size really limits a lot of those tanks on playing on this map properly, meaning that you won't be able to play them to their fullest capabilities in a lot of areas. And I want to get into that a bit more. Because you can't play a tank like you want on this map, in more often than not, you will either resort to really passive plays like using those camping spots in the hills or just the bushes near the spawn areas. It can get either a really lengthy game or they are super short, meaning that people are too aggressive, which also can happen. one other thing that I think is of issue here is that it not just limits certain tanks with how you want to play them, but entire classes in my opinion. Because light tanks, it basically forces you to go here because you're of the fastest class, you need to secure the spot, but if the enemy sends mediums, you most likely lose that duel. Because you have less DPM, a less capable gun, and less armor. The other class that gets heavily affected by this map is tank destroyers, and more importantly, heavily armored ones. Usually those don't have a turret, are very slow, and have quite prominent weak spots, making it on a map like this very easy to take out. If you push them into the middle, you can usually shoot them without them being able to fight back. If you send them through the city, there's nothing they can play against, and they should never even try to go onto the island. So it really limits the playstyle of those. The fact that the spawns are not equally balanced as it normally should be, or at least close to that, also doesn't help this map as well. The city, as I said, is more or less unplayable because either you don't meet anyone and you go too far forward and you die, or it just accomplishes you nothing because no one ever uses that cap circle. At least in most games. The island also is not very useful. The bushes there, some of them don't work properly, so even if you sit behind them, you get spotted through them. And yes, it allows for some good angles, but they can also get shot down very easily if the enemy team pays attention. And what I mean by equality in spawns is, in my opinion, the south spawn is way stronger because it has a better TD location with all those bushes over there and having two separate angles to choose from. The other side also has a TD spot, but you can't really use that properly because you have rocks that block you, they are easily aimed up upon, meaning you're really limited with what you're able to do. And the hold down locations, I think from the south they are just way nicer to maneuver. On the right side of the rock, they're easier to play as well as on the left side. So, you know, just my personal preference there. The only advantage the north spawn does have is once you get the hill, if you even get that. But you could die on your way there, so it doesn't really make it an advantage. As well as the city, which again is pointless, and the island, which doesn't work more often than once. So I think there's an imbalance there that could be resolved probably with a couple of map changes, but I wouldn't have a clue how to do it myself. And that's just an issue that can be avoided by just altering positions, even just slightly. But I'm not the knowledgeable one of map making, of course. And yeah, that's basically it. You have an imbalance, a map that is too small, matches that go either 2 minutes or 7. You rarely have these equal games. It's also normally a walkover, which is really unfortunate because those games are usually boring. And in this game especially, you'll see one of the things I've talked about with the north spawn. As you can see on the minimap, no one is in the city. Not even a single person. No one got the hill either, because if they tried to push, they would have died. Like Dark right here. It was a clever move not to go up further. But that also limits his play here as a medium, which is an issue. And as we'll see in a moment, something that I also do, but not in that fashion, is the Moisian coming from the back, because he has no one to fight with. He cannot go into the middle of the map with the rock, because he's too tall and his weak spots are easily exposed. And in the city, no one is there to fight him, so of course he will at some point push forward. Which is exactly what he does, but by doing that, you either give up your tank entirely if all of the team turns around and your team doesn't counter push them, or you get into a position, let's see if I can show it, not quite, but right there behind these two rocks, but mostly then you can't do anything. Because they have that better TD position as well. And let's just talk about it. Because they have that spot right there with the Gorilla, which has 2 angles to shoot into the middle from. You can cover that area and you can even shoot here. It's a really good position. And I think the stronger one out of the 2 TD spots on this map. And it's not really fair, in my opinion, so it's a bit unfortunate. We also see that in the last game, which is again a medium. Those were not on purpose chosen, this is just the games I got. So yeah, makes it awkward to play on this map, personally, not my favorite. Really don't like it, and yeah. Of course, for new players, all of these issues aren't really a thing, because they will mainly play in the middle, they won't use the other sides. And I mean, they won't care about all of those things too much, but I think knowledgeable players will struggle on this map because you're really limited, like heavily. And also, let's look at this lineup for a moment before the match actually begins. We have Chris here in a 1-2-1, 2 62As and a Vickers. That is 4 tanks that will most likely try to get the hill. Now let's look at the enemy team. STB, Sheridan, 62 and Vickers. That is another 4 tanks that could potentially contest that hill. That means there's at least 1 tank that might instantly die there if the focus is great, or if the enemy sets up an ambush properly. We also have 1 TD only on this side, whilst the enemy has 2 with that better TD spot, makes it even harder to play against. And then of course they have 2 heavy tanks instead of that 1 on the other side. But heavies don't really usually do that well on this map anyway. So it's just, there isn't a lot of things Chris could do here to influence this battle positively, especially since this tank only has 5 degrees of gun depression, which arguably is enough in most locations and on most maps. But a map like mine's, you're gonna struggle a lot. You need like that 1 or 2 degrees more, really. And as you can see right here, 2 tanks instantly onto the hill, his team not able to get it. And that 62A now going there, what is he doing? He's stopping the enemies from being too aggressively from the hill. But what happens is he just got absolutely destroyed. He didn't go onto the hill, but he still died within 40 seconds of this match, which is not how what should happen. And assessing the situation here, you have 2 really good hold down tanks now here, not contested by anyone, because Chris can't do anything because of his lack of turret armor that is easily penned by heat. The 62A having the same struggle and also can't really hold off 2 tanks on his own. The tank destroyer is not in an optimal position, which yes, you could blame onto him, but if you're there, you shoot once, you get spotted, and you could get tracked, you could die, or you just could take a lot of damage whilst you still try to fall behind those rocks. Meaning, it's not optimal either. And then we have those 2 heavy tanks, which I talked about, going to the city because they got nowhere else to go. You can't really use an E100 in the middle anyway, because it's just too tall. So he's going into the city, no one is there, he's going to try to take the camp. And the 57 is going forward, something I also often do, but I often die from it. But there's just nothing else to do, and you can't just sit around all day either. You gotta have to address the situation. And the Vickers as well. He couldn't do anything in the middle, so he relocates. And that is also what Chris will do. Because you need to give up that middle. You cannot defend it. You will just die there slowly. And I think that's an issue on this. We had 4 medium tank games now. And 3 of them were victories. 2 of them from the north spawn. 1 of them from the south. Wait, no. We had 2 games from the south and 1 game from the north, actually. Unless I just am completely wrong in my memory here, which could be the case. But still, what are you gonna do now? You lost 3 tanks, you lost your TD, you lost 2 of your 4 mobile tanks. 1 heavy can't do anything in his current location, the other medium is currently just getting wrecked. And also this 57 can't do much here, and this is the location that I've talked about, that you sometimes get to see people play, and if they rush down this flank. You will have people there in the 62A's location shooting down on you if they don't get challenged. People from the hill if they have a hill. And then you have that TD spot, which they can just easily push over and then shoot you. You're just screwed from 3 angles. And there's no way to defend yourself. And that is exactly what's going to happen to Chrissy in this game. He's down 0-4 already. He's tried to take the middle with his team. He could not get the hill with his team, meaning that he's in a really bad situation for him. And even if he tries to fight this to the bitter end, he's not going to win this. You're not just gonna come back from a 0-4 like this, especially when the enemy team is just on way more hit points and you just don't have the DPM. With, yes, the 121 has great DPM, but you have an E100, one of the lowest DPMs in tier 10, and a 57 heavy who has to reload between his clips. Matchmaking will also take an effect on this. Like, let's say your enemy team has 2 mediums and a light and your team has 1 medium. Those games happen to me as well. Those are pretty much auto losers from the start of the game, because how are you gonna contest the hill? If that one guy goes up, he's gonna die against 3. There's nothing you can really do. And in a lot of those cases, you just can't do anything about it. And that's what I think is frustrating about this map. And what should be changed. And how do I think you could change this map? Well, there's one thing. And one thing only that you can certainly do. And that's take it out of high tier. Don't put it into high tier. Take it out of it. The map is too small. It is not comfortable to play in bigger tanks, which there's a lot of in higher tiers. Just think about all those German heavies, even the VK at tier 8. Those are already very tall, the KV4. And just other tanks, the T34, even though it should excel on a map like that, it often can't because it's just too big. Meaning you are up, you're lower, or your hull itself is too high up, meaning that you can't really use the hull down spots too well. And that's just an issue that you can easily address by limiting the tanks that can see this map. And I think the optimal tier is probably either 5 or 6. Don't go too low, because I think it should really get into people's heads how important the key location is. And it's really easy nowadays to rush up the tiers, so you shouldn't limit the tiers that can see this too much, but I think 6 is the highest it should be. 7 is already too much. And I mean, you can think about balancing later or just make the map bigger, but then you'd have to rework a lot of areas that, you know, were tightly fit for the size the map is on, basically. So limited cap of tiers that this can see, worry about balancing later, and this map will be way nicer to play, because I don't want to go into my mouse and then see mines 3 times in an evening. That's just not fun. And that's my opinion about mines. Yours could be, of course, wrong. There could be maps you hate more than mines. For me, this is my most hated, and for some others as well. I've even made a poll on my Discord server, which went pretty much 50-50 on that. Many saying that there's maps worse than mines, on their opinion, which is fine, because that's an opinion after all. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to see more of this kind of video about a map, and what you could maybe do about it, or what's the issue exactly, so that I could address that, then just let me know in the comments, and maybe even a map that you hate the most that is maybe not mines, or if you maybe agree or disagree on some points that I've mentioned in this video. And with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you all so much for watching, and see you all again next time. Bye bye!